Now let's start by first, since we've chosen our use case, now let's start by getting our data set prepared and then build our machine learning model. Okay, so here is the Jupyter notebook that we're going to actually work alongside, right? So let me just take this face recognition off. We're not there yet, right? Okay, so this is what we have over here. All right, so over here, the first thing that we need to do is to load the various libraries that are necessary for this project, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to go ahead and then do over here. So I'm sure you are familiar with these libraries since we've been using them in our previous projects, right? So if you've been along with the various projects that we've been doing so far, I'm quite sure you are familiar with it. I mean, if you're not familiar with them, I mean, it's not a problem. There's a lot of tutorials on your dashboard for you to get to understand these, right? And I mean, these are just the basic libraries that we're going to need. I mean, the other ones that we will need later on, we will talk about them as we progress, right? So over here we have our NumPy, then we have pandas over here, we have matplotlib over here, and then we have our chat studio.plotly, right? And then we have our couple links here, then we have Seaborn, right? So these are the libraries that we're going to use, right? All these are for the various visualizations, and in order for us to actually plot these visualizations inside the Jupyter notebook, we're going to actually use this matplotlib inline so that we'll be able to plot everything inside our Jupyter notebook. All right, so if I think what you're not maybe familiar with is just chatstudio.plotly, right? So if you don't have it, I mean, it's just simple. We just use this paper store chat studio. You can just easily do that, right? So if you have any error here, just use this one. It means that it's not installed in your Jupyter notebook, right? If you're using Collab too, yeah, you can do the same thing, right? So pip install, then chat studio, right? You can do that. And if you don't have, say, the couplings, you can also do that using pip install couplings, right? And then you can get it installed. All right, so now that is done. So the next thing that we need to do is to load our data set, right? So this data set is actually an SL in an SL format, right? So it's actually in two forms. I have the training data, then I have the testing data. Okay, so I'm going to first do the training data. Later on, I'll show you the test data, right? So later on, I'll show you the test data. So I have the test data on also there, right? And now I'm going to do the training, and later on I'll show you the test. But this one is actually in an SL format, so you can see that we have an XLSX over here. Previously we were using CSV format where we have .csv, right? We're using comma separated format. So in this case, since it's an SL format, we're going to use this. We're going to use this read_SL to actually read our SL data, right? So if it is CSV, then we use read_CSV, right? But this is an SL format. All right, so you have our PD here, which is nothing but pandas. Remember that we imported pandas as PD, right? So after I read everything, I store it in a variable called df, right? So df is the data that we are going to actually work with. Just moving on from here. Okay, so we have our data stored in a variable called df, right? So now that we've read our data set, now let's proceed and then see the first 5 records, right, by using the head function. So now if we do that, this is what we have over here. All right, so let's have a brief overview of the data set that we're going to work with. So we have airlines here. So this comprises of the various airlines, right? So you can see that we have Indigo, we have Air India, we have Jet Airways, we have Indigo. So there are several airlines that we have in this column, right? And then we have the date of the journey, right? So for instance, you can see that we have 24/03/2019, right? So the data that the journey actually happened is actually being recorded on the date of journey column. And then we also have the source and the destination, right? We have the source, we have the destination over there, right? So for instance, from Bangalore to say Delhi, right? And then from say Calcutta to say Bangalore, right? So we have we have various sources and the destinations of these airlines over there, and then the route is also being recorded. The departure time and the arrival time is also being recorded for us, and then we have the duration of these airlines. So for instance, it takes 2 hours 50 minutes to move from, say, Bangalore to New Delhi, right? So it's also being recorded, and whether it's a non-stop or it's 2 stops or 1 stop is also being recorded. And then if there are any additional information, it's also being recorded at the additional information column, right? And then finally we have the price, right? The various price of these airlines being recorded over here, which is our target, right? Which is our target. And basically that is what we have in our data sets. That's what we're going to work with moving on from here. All right, so normally what we do is that we load our data set, and then we start by doing our EDA, which is maybe we check the shape of the data set, we check if there are any null values in there, right? We also see if there are any outliers in there. We do some visualizations and a lot of stuff like that. All right, so let's try. We're going to do all that. But first, let me show you this pandas profiling, right? I'm sure some of you might have been familiar with this pandas profiling, but if you're not familiar with pandas profiling, I mean, it's one of the libraries that you can use to automate your EDA process, right? So over here, what you can do, if you don't have it, you just use this command pip install pandas profiling, right? So I have it, so I'm not actually going to do that, but if you don't have it, you can just do that, pip install pandas profiling, and you get it. All right, so after that, what you can do is to import the pandas profiling as PD or PF. I mean, PF is just any variable name that I choose. I chose PF for pandas profiling. You can use any variable name that you want over here. All right, now what you can do after that is to generate a profile report, right? Generate a profile report which is present in pandas profiling, right? So you just use PF, which is the short form of what pandas profiling that I did over here. So pf dot profile report, right? And then you pass in your data set. Okay, so that is actually going to generate a profile report for you, right? So let's see what is contained in this profile report. All right, so what it's actually going to do is going to give you an overview of your data set, the various variables that you have, some interactions and correlations, missing value, sample, and duplicate rows. All right, so let's take it one by one and then see what is inside these reports that we've been able to generate. All right, so let's take it one by one. So let's take the overview and then see what is inside there. So this is actually going to give you a general overview of your data set. Okay, so you can see that if you see the statistics that we have over here, you can see that the number of variables that we have 11 variables, which is nothing but the columns, right? The various columns that we have over there, and then you can see the number of observations, which is nothing but the number of rows that we have. So normally what we do is that we use dot shape, right? So for instance, df dot shape, then we get that, right? So for instance, you can see over here, this is what we could have done, right? Manually, this is what we could have done, df.shape, and then we get the same thing over there. So that's what this automatic EDA library is actually doing. So it's going to give you that. So you see that we have 11 columns and then 10,683 rows in there. Okay, then you can see that we have some missing values. We have two missing values in there, which is not quite significant, so we can actually drop that. And then you can see the percentage of it is, so it comprises only 0.1%, right? And then there are some duplicate rows, right? You can see we have 222, and then the percentage of that and the memory that is being occupied by this is also being recorded over here for us, right? And then after that, it's also going to give you an overview of the various types that we have for the variable types. So we can see that we have 10 categorical types as against only one numerical type. So that if you go up here and then see your data, so right from airlines, right from airlines all the way to additional information are all categorical columns, right? So we only have the price to be a numerical column, right? So that's basically what this is actually showing us, that we only have the price to be a numerical column, right? That is only one, right? And then we have 10 of categorical columns in there. So that's basically what the overview part of this profile report will show us. So the variable part will actually going to go through all these variables. So for instance, airline, date of journey, source, destination, route, date, time, arrival time, duration, total stops, additional information, price. So it's going to go through all that, and then going to give you an overview or information about these various columns. So for instance, if we pick the airlines, right, it's saying that the airline is a categorical column, right? It's a categorical column, and then you can see the distinct variables that we have over there. We have 12 distinct variables, so 12 different airlines in there, right? And then you can see the uniqueness comprises of 0.1%, right? There are no missing values in there, right? And I mean, since there are no missing values in there, so obviously 0.0%, and the memory size it's occupying is actually being recorded over here, right? It's also going to give you an overview of the first 5 variables in there. So in this case, we have Jet Airways, Indigo, Air India, multiple carriers, SpiceJet over there, right? It's going to give you, and then the count of them is also going to be recorded and then show it to you. Okay, now that is for airlines date of journey, right? It's also going to pick a date of journey, right? So it will do it for all of them. So airlines there, date of journey, right? And then all the way to the price column, right? It's going to do that. So you can see the date of journey is also there. If you see, it's not having any missing values in there. The same thing for source. It's also categorical, but there's a high correlation in there, right? It's correlated with something in there, right? If you this is actually giving you an overview right away that this categorical column, which is the source, is actually correlated with something else in there, right? So you can see that destination is also highly correlated, right? And there are no null values in there. There are 6 distinct destinations in there, right? If you see the routes column, you can see that we have 1 missing value in there, right? And the memory size that it is actually occupying, right, is also being recorded, right? And then the departure time is also we have high cardinality in there, and you can see that there are no missing values in there. And I mean, you can just have an overview of all your data, right? So for instance, some correlations are in there, right? So for instance, price of course is going to be highly correlated. That is you're comparing it with itself, but it's not actually intuitive to do that. All right, and if you see the missing values over here, right? So let me just push this up a bit for you. So normally, if the missing values are a lot, you can see that there will be different bars, but in this case, I mean, I think it's just only the root which is having 1 missing value there. So you can see all of them are 10,683, but if we see this one is 10,682, so 1 missing value in there, right? But if there is, for instance, about 100 of them are missing, you can see that this bar will be a little bit short, right? As compared to the others, right? It's going to be a little bit shorter, right? You can also see in the total stops there is 1 missing values in there in the total stops too. So you can actually see that is also 10,682, right? So the others are quite okay. There are no missing values in there, right? So this is actually going to give you a general overview. So you can see the first 5 rows in there, right? I mean, this one is the first 10 rows, and then the last 10 rows is also being shown to you, right? So I mean, this is actually quite intuitive and quite interesting for you to get a general overview of your data set right from the start. Okay, so now that is done. So I mean, we just use pandas profiling to actually do that. So you can do that. You can just do pip install, right? Pip install pandas profiling, and then you get it. Okay, you can just do that, and then you just do import pandas profiling as PDF, and then you generate your profile report. That's it. Okay, now after that, let's do some manual EDA over here too, and then see how we can prepare our data further. Okay, so this is what it was actually showing us, that we have 10,683 records or rows, and then we have 11 different columns in there. All right, so let's see the various data types that we have, right? So you can see that we have some object, and then we have int over here, right? Or this is supposed to be categorical, as this one was revealing to us earlier on, that they are categorical in there, right? So this is, all of them are actually supposed to be categorical, with the exception of the price, which is actually supposed to be an int, right? So you can actually prepare that part. Now after that, what we can also see is that we can check if there are any null values in there. Right? Previously, the pandas profiling actually revealed to us that there were only 2 null values in there. All right, so over here too, we can actually see that it's true that only this and then that, which is only 2 null values in there. Okay, now we can also see we can drop these, since it's just only 2 null values in there. We can actually drop them. So I'm using drop NA over here, and then I'm just dropping it anyhow, right? And I want this change to reflect in the original data set. So I'm using in place equals true over here, and then you can see that we have if I check if there are any null values in there again, right? If I check that again, you can see that there are no null values in there. Okay, there are no null values in there. So let's do some feature engineering for to get our data set ready for model building.